In this video, I'll replace the spindle and pulley in a riding lawnmower. The riding lawnmower that I have is an Ariens, but I guess Poulan, Caftsman, and Husqvarna all share pretty much the same model. They're just been rebranded for the various manufacturers. This is a 46-inch cutting deck, and before we get started, I want to explain that the way I end up doing it in the video is slightly different than probably what's the best way to do it. When I went to remove the pulleys, I was holding the pulleys and using an impact, and that ended up stripping the splines on the pulleys, and I had to get them and I had to replace them. The alternate way, which I'm going to try to show in the video by just changing up the sequence a little bit, is remove the pulley first by holding onto the blade, and then we can block it with a piece of wood or something like that. And then you go in and you can either, since you're replacing the spindle anyways, you can use vice grips or something to hold the spindle and then remove the bolt that's holding the blade on. That probably going to save the pulley that way. You can check before you do that if the pulley, spindle, or splines look okay or not. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. And I have some other videos on photography and some other car stuff that maybe you'd enjoy. If you do, please feel free to subscribe. I'd appreciate it as well. So here we go. We got to replace the spindle in this sucker. I'm going to replace both of them. So the spindles are basically the bearings and such that that roll, you know, that these pulleys that the belt turn and then attach to the blades underneath here. There's bearings in there. One of them is shot, so this one you can't tell. It's not wobbly, but if I go to the other side, if I can see it, if I reach under here, this thing just wobbles around. So we got to get that replaced. So the first step is to drop the deck, which isn't too hard. So I'm gonna walk through that in a little bit, but basically there's a bunch of these clips here that will be disconnecting, and then I think we have to undo the front belt there. Then this whole thing comes out, and we'll slide it off to the side. So as you can see, there's one here on the side, there's one here on the front. There's going to be another one on the other side, and then a couple other pieces that I'll show you, and then I'll always clean out here. Just to show you how these come off, basically you just separate it here, ow, and do that. I also dropped the deck to the ground, so you just adjust this thing so it's all the way down as loose as possible. So there's two of these, one on either side. There's going to be a cable that we're going to disconnect here. I pulled the belt off the front pulley here, basically just out of the hooks and then off the pulley. So at this point you can pull the deck out, and then we'll unhook this. Basically push this plastic tab down, allows you to get this unhooked, and then we'll be able to go in and unhook this. You can pull this back a little bit to help take some tension off. A combination of the two, you'll be able to unhook all that. So I used an impact to get these bolts off, but this one started spinning. It tore up the pulley here, so I ended up putting the blade back on, holding it with my hand as I used the impact. That's one nice thing about the impacts, is they're not going to cause it to spin, so to speak, like where you're going to cut your hand up, but you should be careful about that. I probably have to replace this pulley, mostly because the teeth that hold it in, onto the shaft, looks like they might have got stripped out. So fun times. So now there's these things holding the pulleys on. You can actually pull this, pulls them away. You might have to use a puller to actually pull them off here. So I'm going to try without first, and then see. So this is the gear puller I'm using. There's different types. You could also use these holes if you have like a bar type that go across. This just happens to be the size that I have. It shouldn't be on there very hard, so it should come off fairly easily. You just have to make sure that this isn't in the way, and we'll pull that pulley off. So I flipped it over. Next thing I'm going to do is remove these blades. My blades are definitely seen better days. I'm going to replace them with new ones while I'm at it. I'm going to probably save these just so that I have some spares just in case, but yeah, I've hit a few rocks and various other things with these things. So these will try to spin on you as you're loosening them up. If you have an impact, that definitely helps. Yeah, otherwise, you just try to block it with a piece of wood or something like that to keep them from spinning. I even just held them with my hand. Seemed to work. When the blades aren't sharp, that certainly is a little bit easier to do. The last step to get these things out, there's these 4 bolts here, 13mm socket. They're likely to break. You're going to have these posts here that are going to be attached. Make sure to replace them when you get them. You get new hardware, so it's okay if they break. Alright, so yeah, they just fell right out. Of the 8 bolts holding them in, 6 of them broke, so you should get replacements when you install the new one, so that's not a big deal. Just put anti-seize in them. What happens is these are aluminum, the bolts are steel, and you get a little galvanic corrosion occurs, and then the bolts get like seized in. You can see mine are in pretty bad shape. This is hot wire for like a electric fence that got tangled up in here, so that probably wasn't helping it at all. This one has some binding twine stuck in there, and it's hard to tell, but basically what happens is this thing can kind of rock. Was loose and it was like back and forth. So now that so this bearing is fried down here. Yeah, here you go. So that movement back and forth, was the problem. So it sounded like a chattering when I was mowing. It'd be like, what was rattling down here? And then I was able to move the pulley up top. I can move it back and forth, so I knew that it was the spindle. So getting this replaced. Now the new ones, they're fancy looking. You can see here's the hardware. They have a Zerk fitting on top. I honestly don't know what you're going to do with that, because there's nothing between like this bearing and the bottom bearing is just empty space. So unless you're going to fill the entire thing up with grease, which I guess is an option if you think that's worthwhile, you could do that. Otherwise, I don't think using the Zerk fitting is very helpful. Hi chicken, I don't have any food for you. So the other thing that cooks these things is that these get clogged up, and then they're not able to cool as much, and then the bearing overheats and starts to fry. So it's a combination of that, getting stuff in here. This is like a seal basically. So I think now would also be a good time to paint your deck and do some other maintenance. So you can see inside, here's the bottom bearing, and here's the shaft, the Zerk fitting, here's the hole where the grease will come out. So the grease will come out, and I guess it'll work its way down here. It'd be nice if it was further down closer to the bearing or going into the bearing somehow. So like you'd literally be greasing into this. It would probably be a good idea to pack this bearing with some grease on the back side. This bearing out here is kind of coming out, so I'm going to tap that back in. So this brand, bought on Amazon, 2 of these for like 30 bucks. I know, seems like they'll work. Alright, so the deck is painted now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grease these down here. Just a little extra grease. I mean, there's some grease already in them. I'm also going to grease the little rubber seal that's around the bottom here. To disassemble it, all you have to do is you can leave the nut on, just move it up a little bit. You can tap it, knock the shaft out of the bottom here, and then grease it. And then I'm going to reassemble it. Like I said, this has that grease fitting and such. I'm not going to worry about greasing that. I'm going to put some anti-seize on these just in case I have to take them apart again in the near future. And then I'm pretty much going to install both of them into the mower deck. Then what I'm going to do is install the blades. So the spindles are in. Now I'm going to put the blades in. If you forget which side's up or how they install, basically these little whoops right here go up, and so the blade side is only sharpened, in one direction. It's chamfered here for the blade. That goes up as well. Basically, it sucks everything up, and that's how it pulls the grass back up and shoots it out, so these little thingies go up. But the other thing you can do, you can just reference your old blade. You can see this is a big whatever, can't tell, but here you see the little circle. That's where the washer was for the bolt that held this on to the spindle. So this is the bottom, and this is the top, and then here's the new blade. You can see these, you know. So this side's up, and you know, so we'll install it. New pulleys, nice and shiny, zinc coated. I used an impact, so I just had the deck up on its side for most of the installation, including for the spindles there. Used an impact just to drive that nut down while holding the blade on the other side. That wasn't a problem. Again, impacts, the nice thing about them is that they kind of hit. They're not going to cause the blade to like spin and cut off your hand, though I wouldn't use anything super powerful like a drill. Use an impact, just so that you don't lose hold of the blade and go ahead and cut your fingers off. I'm not responsible for you guys cutting your fingers off, just FYI. This is all for references only. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide down underneath the mower. Right now I'm getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, which is not fun, so I'm going to try to do this quickly. Move these arms forward. I don't think you'll be able to get it in with them backwards, but if you know, just as a hint. So we'll slide this in. The nice thing about the blades is they don't hit each other, so the clocking of these is not particularly important. Maybe there's some philosophy on which way the blades should be clocked, but I never paid attention to that. Just FYI, the wire that comes down, you can hook it up first to the deck before you slide it in. There's a holder back here. It goes underneath this arm, and then it goes into this bracket. So what you do is you hook it on the far end first, the spring going underneath this arm. Then you hook it here, slide the deck under, clip the wire back up there, and you should be good to go. Okay, this arm goes up to a stud that's up here. Lower your arm down so that you have plenty of room to get this one on, and then you're going to hook up in the front. So you get basically these two on either side, and then that one on the front is all you do. This one up here has the washer and the clip. The clips are all the same size. That's the only one that had a cotter pin on mine. It might have been because I lost it before. So that one has a washer, and then that one doesn't. And then next thing we'll do after this is put the belt on. If you have problems getting the belt on, you can check out my other video. I'll post a link here. One thing I wasn't smart enough about my other video was that dropping the deck all the way down does make it a lot easier to see for getting the belt back on and off. But yeah, we'll give it a test run. Everything should be pretty smooth. If you have any questions or constructive criticism, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to get to them as soon as I can. Sometimes I'm not as fast as I like to be. And then yeah, I hope this is helpful, and again, if you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. All right,